Hey everyone, Reid Henrichs with Valor. In this video, we're going to talk about how to un-brainwash yourself. Let's go ahead and get started. Folks, this video is going to contain some dangerous material. It's going to contain some material that people have tried to ban over the years. It's going to contain information schools have wanted to ban. And that's okay, because the lessons in these books that I'm going to talk about, they're going to be so profound. And I think that people watching this video, whether you're in high school, college, or beyond, it's going to really change the way that you look at things, or if you already look at things with a critical eye, it'll help you go deeper in that. Now, the books that I'm going to have are my all-time favorites. These are fictional, some of them, and then some of them are historical. So I like a nice split, but either way you look at it, they're going to be fantastic. So I'm going to show you a nonfiction book and then its fictional counterpart, which I think heeds the lessons of the history book. So what I'm going to do first is show you the nonfiction book here. This is probably one of the most thorough accounts of how the Third Reich came to power, how the Nazis came to power. And it was written by William Shirer, and he was there. He lived in Germany. He also has other books about the Third Reich, but this one I think is the most important. It's called The Rise and the Fall of the Third Reich by William Shirer. Very thorough. Amazing how they did it. He goes even before they took power, how the Nazi Party rose, what conditions it grew in, and what they did and how they did it. This book here is great. You can see how thick it is. This is not light reading. It's it's nearly 1,300 pages in length. So not light reading, but nonetheless, if you ever wondered how could a nation become like Germany did from 1933 until 1945, this book is great. I love it, and it shows you some great lessons in there. So the complementary book for that is a great book by Aldous Huxley called Brave New World. Now this is a classic. I've got an affinity for this book. It's a dystopian novel, futuristic novel, where in the future everybody is lined up in classes. In other words, like your social status, people are genetically engineered. It's a very hedonistic culture. This is where people get whatever they want. There are no lasting relationships. It's completely hedonistic, as I said. Words such as family and mother are considered evil. It's complete self-indulgence with a few people at the top who are called controllers, who tell you exactly what's acceptable and what's not. And if you ever start feeling bad about your life, you just take a pill and then you feel better. Huxley wrote this in the 1930s, before a lot of that stuff existed. And this is a book that actually, when I was teaching high school, we had mandatory reading hours, or at least I think 20 or 30 minutes. And I asked before I had a group, I said, what's one of the most banned books? And so I looked it up, and this is certainly one of the most banned books nationally. And as a result of that, I ordered 25 copies of this. The high school kids loved it. A lot of them wanted to take it home. They technically weren't supposed to take it home, but a lot of them wanted to take it home so they could finish it. They liked it when I read it aloud to them during our reading hour. And they couldn't believe the things that were in this book. They said, "That so much of this sounds like it's going on right now." I said, well, that was written 80, 90 years ago. And they're, wow, good lesson. So I think had the Germans gotten their way, I think this is what the future would have looked like. The next historical book that I would definitely recommend, and it's 3 volumes, it's by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. It's considered one of the best books ever written historically. It is the best nonfiction book of the 20th century, according to Time magazine. This was written by a former Soviet army officer who was thrown in the gulags. And of course, the reason it's called the Gulag Archipelago is he describes how the system was set up, how tens of millions of people were falsely accused by their own government, how the communists took and seized power, how they took people and threw them in concentration camps. And in fact, the Soviets were the first ones to do that, not the Germans. He goes into it in detail. As I said, it's 3 volumes. You can get each one separately, or you can get it as a set. This is one of the biggest eye-opening books that you'll ever read. In fact, my sophomore year of college, I wrote a 100-page paper on this book and the lessons about it. And it was one of these things where the professor told me, he says, you got a gift for writing. What are you going to do with that gift? Little did I realize that, 15 years later, I would have already written 2 books myself. But this book here is amazing, guys. It talks about communism and how they took and seized power and how they set up their system of accusations and your social status. This is one of the greatest nonfiction books ever written. The counterpart to that is right here, is George Orwell's 1984. Had the Soviet communists gotten their way in their worldwide, or at least in Europe, this is what I believe the future would have looked like had they been successful. This is one of the classics. This is also one of those books that's been banned. This is one of those books that is dangerous to people that are totalitarian. This is a book that is so well written, and the lessons are profound because so much of what is in this book has come true. This is a well-written book. A lot of the lessons have come true. Orwell wrote this as a warning manual for the future if government intrusion would continue the way that it did at his time. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't look at it as a warning. They looked at it as a blueprint. So, unfortunately for a lot of people, this is in here. And I want to read a very startling passage from this book. And just bear with me because I think that this should give you chills. The party seeks power entirely for its own sake. We're not interested in the goods of others. We're interested solely in power. Not wealth or luxury or long life or happiness, only power, pure power. The German Nazis and Russian communists came very close to us in their methods, but they never had the courage to recognize their own motives. They pretended, perhaps they even believed, that they had seized power unwillingly and for a limited time. And that just round the corner there lay a paradise where human beings would be free and equal. We're not like that. We know that no one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. And the character in this book, O'Brien, doesn't make any qualms about who or what the party is or what he believes. He gave you that blueprint for what these people were willing to do. Guys, this is a great book for your kids. It's a great book for you if you haven't read it. But this is one of those that I think will be a game changer. The next book, or volumes of books that I would recommend, is The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbons. This is an 8-volume set. I've only got 4 of them here, but it's an 8-volume set, 7 or 8 volumes depending on the publisher that you buy it from. Guys, this is largely considered the greatest work of history ever written. He goes into when Rome was at its zenith and then how it started to decline and fall. A lot of the things in there are illiteracy, laziness, and believe it or not, effeminacy with men. He talks about this and he discusses, I can't summarize this in this kind of video. This is hours and hours. This is a multiple semester class. So he talks about some causes on how Rome went from being the greatest nation in the world, the greatest empire the world had ever known, to becoming corrupt, immoral, weak, I guess in a way ultra tolerant of other things. So when he goes into this work, this is going to take some time to devour. Don't just read the cliff notes and take the shortcut. This is something that you need to explore for yourself, and it takes time. But once again, we're talking about getting your mind right. We're talking about actual learning from history. And this, I think, is considered the greatest work of history that there is, even to this very day. The complementary book to Edward Gibbons' Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire is Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. This is about a future where things are the complete opposite of what they really are. And firemen, for example, instead of putting out fires, burn things. Books are burned. Why is the title Fahrenheit 451? That is a temperature that paper burns. And in the future, books were not allowed. They were to be burned. Nobody was supposed to read them. This is a future where there's constant external stimulation, electronic devices in the wall, squawking constantly this. A lot of similarities to today. Bradbury, of course, unlike Orwell and Huxley, does provide some hope for the future. I'm not going to give the book away. But whereas Orwell and Huxley in Brave New World in 1984, it's very bleak, very dark, abysmal look into the future. Bradbury offers a dystopian future vision, but there is hope at the end. So this is the one where you don't come away with it feeling depressed, but you do come away with it with a little glimmer of hope. But there's a lot of crossover between that. So why did I juxtapose this to the decline and fall of the Roman Empire? We talked about illiteracy. We talked about the dumbing down of the population. Well, in the future here, this is what the people in charge in this book sought to do. Distract people, give them electronica, give them constant visual and auditory stimulation so that they don't sit quietly and read books and reflect on things. And I think this is it's a short read. It's about 150 pages, 140 pages. It's not that long. This is one of those classics, guys. I love Bradbury's work. And being that there's 7 books in this collection, This, of course, is another historical fiction, but this is Unintended Consequences, guys, by John Ross. This is about United States history. It incorporates real history with a fictional narrative. That's why I call it historical fiction. This you can't put down. I mean, you're going to read this every day until you finish it, and it is lengthy. The length of the book here, it's 800 pages nearly. So I think that if you want to read about the history of gun control and how they got things done, there is good history in here. If you want to read about the history of gun control in America and how they got it done, along with a good fictional narrative, this is a great book. In fact, it was banned in Canada. This book here, the Canadian government did not allow to be printed. I don't know if it's still banned there. It may still be. But I know they were not allowed to have this in Canada because it was seen as too explosive, too controversial. Guys, happy ending to this book. If you want to really have a happy ending to a story, this book is for you. But it also shows the gun control, and it also talks about the gun culture in the United States of America. Unbelievable read. I couldn't put it down. I'd be up till 3 and 4 in the morning trying to devour as much of it as I could. That's how great of a book it is. So why is the title of this video, How to Unbrainwash Yourself? Because we have to read history, but we also have to look into possible futures if tyranny is allowed to continue. We have a lot of distractions in our lives right now, whether it's the internet or whether it's social media or whether it's other things going on, the constant negative news cycle. Well, I like to sit quietly and read books. I like to sit quietly and reflect on the lessons that other people have given us, whether that's through historical books or through historical fiction or through novels that they take a broad view of things. You know, here at Valor Ridge, we believe in attitude, marksmanship, and purpose. These books, your attitude is important. How are our attitudes formed? By information and critical thought. Our purpose, what we're willing to fight for, what we're willing to lay it on the line for. Well, these books can help galvanize you. It can help your kids learn real stuff. Rather than watching and listening to drivel, they can actually read some books that are going to help them and form their worldview. It's not all propaganda that people are exposed to. You can go and look at the classics. You can go and read history books from people that have extensively researched things. You can read books from novelists that wanted to warn people about the possible future if they didn't wake up. I think a lot of us can see the writing on the wall if things continue unchecked. So we got to strengthen our mind, we've got to strengthen our body, and we've got to strengthen our spirit. And I think that it starts in the mind. It really does. It starts in the mind, how your worldview is, but know that this was not unexpected. These things have been predicted. These things have happened before. The Germans and the Russians, they were able to do this because they had a misinformed population. They had a population that believed every propaganda that they put out. Well, I think it's high time that we break that cycle. I think it's high time that we start strengthening our minds, our bodies, and our spirits. I've got links in the description box below to all these books, guys, so feel free to look at those and get those. I'm a big believer in knowledge. I'm a big believer in analysis. If you found the information in the video helpful, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Facebook. That link is down below. And if you want to learn how to use your firearms for defense of your family, your way of life, for your belief system, come on out to Valor Ridge and we can help you with that. This is Reid Henrichs of Valor Ridge reminding you, the lessons that we learn are written on the tombstones of others. We'll see you on the ridge.